This week on Horse of the West, the NRHA Futurity Open Championship, the original, and this year with a historic first place prize of $250,000.
The biggest check in the Western sports industry on one night. It's awesome.
The hardest event to win by far.
And that's why I love it. If it was easy, I wouldn't want to do it.
It's harder than ever for two-time champion Casey Deary, facing one of the greatest challenges of his career.
How much does this hurt you when you stop?
Just a lot.
What happened to Casey and how he fares at the Futurity coming up. This is it, the biggest moment of the year for reigners, the NRHA Open Futurity Finals. Nearly $1.4 million in prize money will be paid out in this final day of action, nearly $1 million of that right here in the MS Diamonds TX Level 4 Open Championship. Cade McCutcheon is the defending champion. He won in 2019 at the age of 19 and became the youngest NRHA Futurity winner and $1 Million rider. As the son and grandson of $1 Million riders, Cade knows how tough it will be to make it back to the winner's circle here in Oklahoma City.
There's a lot of $1 Million riders, a lot of really, really good horse trainers that haven't won it yet. And that's why I felt so lucky to have won it last year, because I know how hard it is. I've been around it my whole life. I know it is the hardest event to win by far.
NRHA $6 million rider Andrea Fappani also won his first Futurity at a very young age. That was in 2001. He didn't win another for 10 long years.
At the beginning, I got there so quickly that I was like, well, I guess it's not that big of a deal. And then I realized how big of a deal it was.
Andrea says he's trying hard not to think too much about the pressure of that record $250,000 first place purse as he prepares to show his 3 finals horses. For the NRHA, there has been the pressure of navigating the pandemic, which caused budget and staffing cuts early in the year as the association faced show cancellations around the world. But the reining industry not only rebounded by the fall, it catapulted to a record event at the National Reining Breeders' Classic in Tulsa. That was followed by an even bigger event here in Oklahoma City.
The size of this show, the size of the other shows that they've done this year has been unprecedented, really. We're excited about awarding $250,000 to the winner tonight.
Reigners are largely funding that prize increase themselves, taking a chance on future growth as they did back in 1983 when they upped the purse to a record $100,000.
Nobody had raised the money. It was just a vision, a goal that was established, and nobody worried about the how. It's what we're going to do it, and why? Because we want to grow the industry, but how we're going to do it, we don't know, but that's what happened.
This time, Reigners did raise the money first. It took only 24 hours.
When that conversation started, it was like spontaneous combustion. It just went up in a heartbeat, and there was immediate support for it. I mean, so much that we were taken aback a little bit, and I think that momentum will carry us a long ways as we build a permanent funding for that plan.
It's not just the $250,000 for the Futurity winner, although that's significant, but having $60,000 for the non-pro winner. We doubled the money for the North American Affiliate Championships. I mean, I think we're looking at all aspects of the industry, not just the Futurity winner, and it certainly is important, but we're convinced that we need to service all parts of the industry. Now, what will happen with this is it will continue to grow the Futurity purse. I think the, not published, but I think the unstated goal is $500,000 in 5 years to the winner, if you will. I think that's a vision that a lot of folks have right now, and that would be outstanding. There's not been a Western sport, to my knowledge, that ever paid that kind of purse to a winner. It's just not happened.
Hats off to the guys that put the money up, and it was their idea, and they're backing it with their checkbooks, so that's fantastic. And it does nothing but increase the value of our horses and bring more interest to the industry, so it's fantastic.
And it's not just about the money, we know that, but we also know that's what attracts attention, attracts people to our sport, and so we're so happy and proud to be able to do that.
Cade McCutcheon, a third-generation reiner, agrees this is all about much more than the paycheck.
For me, the Futurity is about the title as much as anything. It's about being the Futurity champion. Like last year, if it was $50,000, I'm pretty sure my owner was still going to be happy to be the Futurity champion. So it's awesome. I love it. It's great for the sport, but it's still, the title is as big a deal as anything.
Former champion and $4 million rider Craig Smirsaw believes the money is a big deal, but the title is also. He was a $3 million rider who'd been training for decades before he won his first NRHA Futurity. Craig's reaction in 2017 said everything about what that title means.
The Futurity is the thing that I grew up wanting. That's why I wanted to train horses. I wanted to train NRHA Futurity horses.
And that is partly about the challenge of preparing 3-year-olds.
They're brand new. You have to teach them. You can't squeak by. I mean, you got to be a horse trainer. You got to be a showman. You can't. I mean, you got to be everything to get a 3-year-old shown. And I think it's so freaking hard. And I wonder why some days I do what I do, because it's so aggravating and so hard. But I mean, that's why I love it. If it was easy, I wouldn't want to do it.
The journey to get to the Futurity, it's what really is so special. There's so many up and downs. If it was me, I'd probably just ride 2-year-olds all day long, because I love that. You know, they don't have any baggage with them. They are what they are. They're born with their qualities, and they, you know, every day it's such a cool experience to ride them. But you know, these 3-year-olds and bringing them here and being able to be in the final and be a contender with all three, that's just everything to me.
Andrea won his first Futurity from Draw 1, and he has drawn up first this year on a small-town trick by Tricked Out Spook out of a small-town gal. Andrea tells us Pat Warren of Rancho Oso Rio bought this stallion because she loved his white ear. But he's proven to be more than just a pretty ear with the Reserve Championship at Best of the West in Scottsdale. He and Andrea get things rolling for us here in Oklahoma City with a 2:21. Brian Bell of Pilot Point, Texas, has 2 horses qualified. He is a North Carolina native and one of those $1 million riders still looking for a first NRHA Futurity Championship. Brian earns a 219.5 on this homebred stallion by Not Rough at All, the first baby out of the family's mare, Juicy Red Berry.
She's 6 years old, and so we're pretty happy for the first baby to be this good. He's kind of like his dad. You run down there and you say whoa, and he almost speeds up because he hits the ground and he pulls himself along with his front end, and really cool horse.
Another 219.5 for NRHA $6 million rider and Hall of Fame member Sean Flarida of Springfield, Ohio, on Whizsicle by SG Frozen Enterprise out of Miss Whizzeltown. Defending champion Cade McCutcheon of Aubrey, Texas, has 2 horses qualified, and Gunnerstown is up first. He's by NRHA $2 million sire Hollywood's Tinseltown out of Bubblegun. This stallion is owned by NRHA $1 million owner David Silva. Cade's looking good again this year in his second season as a professional rider, earning a 221.5, and that's going to move him into first. Cade knows, though, that he left a few points in the show pen.
He was really good for me. My first 2 stops around the side. First one, he got in a little too deep and popped up at the end. The other one, I just missed him a little bit. But he tried really hard for me tonight. He's a really nice horse. He's got a very bright future.
Here is evidence of what exactly the NRHA Futurity means to riders and owners. Just take a look at Casey Deary. He's a soon-to-be $2 million rider from Weatherford, Texas, competing here at OKC this week despite a serious cervical spine injury.
Yeah, I had one get stuck in the horse walker, and I jumped in to try to help him, and I just put myself in a bad spot. And the horse is fine, and I will be when this is over, but just, yeah.
This son of NRHA $12 million sire and Hall of Fame member Gunner is out of the mare She's Out of Your League that Casey rode to the second of his 2 NRHA Futurity Championships. This stallion, owned by DAG Ventures, is named Downright Amazing, and so is Casey's effort. The judges award a 223, which will move Casey Deary to the top of the scoreboard. As always, he leans on his faith.
But all week I've read Corinthians, 2 Corinthians 12, Paul's letter, and it talks about the thorn in the flesh and how his grace is sufficient for me. His strength is in my weakness, and I can't be any more weak than now.
No lead is safe in this crowd. Craig Smirsaw and Andrea Fappani each have 2 more horses to show. Craig will explain a bit later how he enjoyed the COVID lockdown at first and what changed his mind about that. Be right back. Welcome back to State Fair Park in Oklahoma City and Horse of the West coverage of the granddaddy of them all in reining, the NRHA Futurity Open Championship. Two-time champion Casey Deary, wearing a neck brace and fighting off pain, is in the lead with a 2:23 on Downright Amazing. Cade McCutcheon is in third with a 2:21.5. Andrea Fappani is half a point back on A Small Town Trick. Andrea's up now on his second horse, All Bets Are Off, bred and owned by NRHA $2 million owners Archese Quarter Horses USA. This stallion is impeccably bred by NRHA Hall of Fame member and $12 million sire Gunner out of the Hall of Fame mare Wimpy's Little Chick.
He's been one of my favorites from the beginning. I've been lucky enough that Mr. Archese put him in training as a 2-year-old early on. I got to do all the work on him, and I don't know, one of those horses that completely different than my style, but at the end of the day, still works out.
These two won the Friends of Reigning Futurity Championship in Tennessee earlier in the year with a score of 225. Can they pull that off here in Oklahoma City with a $250,000 winner's purse on the line? The judges say yes. In fact, Andrea and the Archese stallion earn exactly that, a 225 to sweep into the lead.
This horse actually popped a splint, and we took a couple months off right in the middle of the summer when it's important, so I wasn't able to show him some of the early pre-futurities. That really thinking back, I might learn something from it, and he peaked at the right time. He was at the best tonight.
Craig Smersall is back now on Setting Off to Town by Gunner's Tinseltown out of Setting Off Smart. Craig actually picked this horse out for Taylor Sheridan, writer-producer of the Paramount hit Yellowstone.
Turns out he's just been a really nice horse, and he worked for me, and Taylor was thrilled to let me show him.
Craig says he really enjoyed getting to spend so much time at home during the lockdown last spring, at least at first.
It was really nice to be home for that many consecutive weekends in a row. I got pretty good at doing carpenter work, and I did some roofing and some driveway patching, and then, after all that, I really started to miss my day job. So I couldn't have been happier to go to a horse show after all that.
Casey Deary is sitting in the reserve slot right now and has one more ride to gut through tonight. This is Starfire 66 by Inferno 66 out of the great mare Winder Up Chick. Now, despite his injury, the pain, and the neck brace, Casey has another pretty run, earning a 221.5 to slide into a tie for third with Cade McCutcheon and Gunnerstown.
Yeah, she was a good girl. She gave me all she had in there, and she's such an amazing stopping thing. So it's been a lot of fun to ride her. Marty and Kevin Corcoran are amazing people and have been good customers. So I'm fortunate to have her.
Casey Deary is in second and third. Andrea Fappani in first with a 225 on All Bets Are Off. Craig Smersall has another horse to go, as does Andrea, who tells us he should have bought a share in this one. And Brian Bell has one more. He'll share the food analogy he says sums up his trip to the 2020 NRHA Futurity with its record $250,000 winner's purse. Don't write off.
Your Horse Inside and Out with Dr. Joe Carter. Sponsored by Beringer Ingelheim.
A myelogram is a special x-ray that we use to examine the horse's neck if we're worried about it being not formed properly or having trauma or an injury. And you might have soft tissue that's impinging on the spinal cord, creating hind end weakness. So we're going to go look at some radiographs or a myelogram of the horse's neck region, which is this area right through here. So a myelogram is basically a procedure where we're going to inject a dye into the spinal canal of the horse. We're going to use a long spinal needle, and it's going to go into the gap between the horse's head and the first vertebrae in their neck. And we inject this dye into the canal, and that will allow us to look at the soft tissue in the spinal canal, where the discs are and where the spinal vertebrae, the bones themselves, if they're narrowed, you'll see this narrowing of the dye column, which will show a contrast between the nervous tissue, the soft tissue, and the bone, allowing us to see if there's an impingement on the nerves that are in the spinal column. Okay, this impingement on the nerves is what causes the incoordination, the weakness, the ataxia that the horse will have typically in their hind end. This happens more frequently in the hind end because the nerves that go to the hind end are on the outer part of the spinal cord, so they're getting the impingement early on in the process. As the condition advances and the discs or the damage increases and there's deterioration. You can see neurologic signs in the front end of the horse. Sometimes these horses are recumbent, can't get up in their worst cases. So equine, a myelogram is a procedure that we use in horses to try and diagnose a wobbler syndrome. And I'm Dr. Joe Carter with Your Horse Inside and Out.
Your Horse Inside and Out is sponsored by Boehringer Ingelheim. Before making any decisions about your horse's health, be sure to contact your veterinarian.
Welcome back to Horse of the West. $250,000 is on the line for first place alone here in Oklahoma City at the MS Diamonds TX NRHA Futurity Level 4 Open Championship. But there's nearly $1 million total being handed out in all levels of the Open Futurity. From Draw 10, Andrea Fappani's 225 on All Bets Are Off has held the lead. Brian Bell has qualified 2 horses for this final and says his philosophy for the NRHA Futurity was simple. Go for it.
Before I came here, I tried to decide if I wanted to be a hot dog or a weenie, so I wanted to be a hot dog, and I think I was all week.
Brian is currently in 6th on his first horse and is up now on the stallion he rode to the top score in the prelims. Tammy Nelson's aptly named Gonna Be Big Time. They needed 225 to force a runoff. They had a 223.5 and a 224.5 in the first 2 goes, so Brian and Gonna Be Big Time have a shot at the 225 of Andrea Fappani. It is going to be very, very close. The word from the judges, a 224.5, which will move them into 2nd place.
This horse has been great. Tammy that owns him, she bred him, owns the mother, the grandmother, the great-grandmother. From this time, this horse was a yearling. She said he was for me, and he's been an angel to train all along.
Andrea Fappani is up next on his final horse, The American Dream, by NRHA $6 million sire Magnum Chick Dream out of Gunner Get You Done.
This is a special horse to me. Morris Colmer has been a special client, a great friend, and he turned me loose when I told him I've got a yearling that looks the part. I think we should partner up on it. And he's like, you want to partner up or do you want me to buy it? I should have partnered up, but I just told him, okay, go ahead and buy him.
Good news for Morris. Andrea ends up with the 223, which will move him into a tie for 3rd with Casey Deary and Downright Amazing. The final rider now is Craig Smersall on Extra Kiss Me Again by Boom Schernick out of SS Kiss Me Kate.
He takes after his daddy, Boom Schernick, and I adored his dad. That's probably one of my favorite show horses of all time.
Craig Smersall ends up with a 219 on Extra Kiss Me Again. For his 3 final horses, he takes home more than $52,000. The reserve championship goes to Brian Bell and Gonna Be Big Time. Combined with his earnings from his 8th place finish on Mr. Boaz, Brian's cash haul is more than $148,000. Andrea Fappani wins his 4th NRHA Futurity Championship on board the stallion All Bets Are Off, owned by Archese Quarter Horses USA. It's a seminal victory for the family patriarch, NRHA Hall of Fame member Eleuterio Archese.
You know, Mr. Archese, he turned 87 this year, and he said, Andrea, one of my last dreams is to win the Futurity again, and I'd love to do it with an Italian rider. So I was like, well, I'll try as hard as I can. So
Andrea says he had a hard time keeping his mind off of that and the record $250,000 first place payoff.
There's just so much pressure behind, even if you try not to think about it, it's always there. So to be able to stay calm and show my horses tonight, it was pretty special.
Andrea's total earnings on his 3 finals horses, nearly $360,000. It's a huge year for Andrea and a record year for the National Reining Horse Association Futurity. Be right back. Welcome back to Horse of the West. This year's Futurity Salute to the NRHA's newest $1 million riders is brought to you by the letter M for McCutcheon, Mulestetter, and Mills. Cade McCutcheon of Aubrey, Texas decided when he was 12 that he wanted to be a $1 million rider. The same year, he became the youngest NRHA non-pro to qualify for the Level 4 championship final. But even Cade could not have imagined what history had in store for him just 7 years later. In 2019, Cade checked off half a dozen career goals in a single season. Among them, he turned pro, was co-champion of the inaugural Run for $1 Million, became NRHA Futurity champion, reserve champion, and $1 million rider. That came on top of his team gold and individual silver performance for Team USA at the 2018 World Equestrian Games. With 3 $1 million plus riders and 3 NRHA Hall of Fame members in his pedigree, Cade was bred and groomed for success in the show pen. Still, he was astonished by his first open year and says he just tried to enjoy every minute of it and then start working for the next year. Matt Mills of Scottsdale is a frequent finalist in NRHA major events and has made his way to $1 million on horses like Janice Dixon's Wimp's Cool Breeze, his highest earner to date. His first Level 4 Open Futurity finalist was Freckles Got a Shiner, owned by Vincent Mafucci. But one of the biggest moments of Matt's career will always be earning a team gold at the 2006 World Equestrian Games on board his breakout stallion, Easy Odie Whiz. In Matt's early years as a trainer, he came awfully close to giving it all up. He was halfway to becoming a firefighter when NRHA Hall of Fame member Richie Greenberg brought him 4 horses to work, and he decided he could make his living in the saddle. This year, Matt crossed the $1 million mark with help from mounts like Tim and Mary Beth Ruckman's Special Kind of Gun, and says the journey has surpassed any expectations he had as an LA kid taking the city bus to his riding lessons. Martin Muhlstetter, also of Scottsdale, is a consistent NRHA top 20 professional who at home in Austria rode everything from Warm Bloods to Haflingers before deciding he wanted to be a reining horse trainer. Fortunately, he was able to do so despite the skepticism of his mother, who told him there was no such thing. Martin proved Moody wrong when he swept past the $1 million mark at home in Scottsdale with his win at the Arizona Best of the West Friends of Reining Derby on board Spook's Grand Slam, owned by Martin and his wife Kim. Martin's breakout horse was Country Custom, who's now living the dream, retired in Scottsdale at Martin and Kim's place. Martin's biggest win so far was another horse he and Kim owned, the great gelding Blue Collar Tag at the 2014 National Reining Breeders' Classic. Martin's been proud to represent Team Austria at the World Equestrian Games, but says earning the title of NRHA $1 million rider is simply a lifetime dream come true. Congratulations to Cade McCutcheon, Matt Mills, and Martin Muhlstetter on crossing the $1 million mark. Next time on Horse of the West, from Oklahoma City, coverage of the Better Barrel Races 2020 World Final. I'm Jennifer Reynolds. We'll see you then.